Karen sat at her kitchen table, the letter trembling in her hands. The unexpected news had arrived that morning, wrapped in a nondescript envelope. It was from a lawyer representing a distant relative she had barely known existed. The letter informed her that she had inherited a house, a grand, old Victorian estate in a small town she had never heard of. The timing couldn't have been better. Recently divorced and feeling adrift, Karen saw this as a sign, a chance to start over. The decision to go was immediate and easy. Within days, she had packed her belongings and embarked on the journey to Cedarville. The drive was long and filled with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Karen's mind raced with possibilities about the house and its contents. She imagined dusty old rooms filled with forgotten antiques and a garden overrun with wildflowers. As she neared her destination, the town's quaint charm began to unfold. Cedarville was picturesque, with its tree-lined streets and charming, old-fashioned storefronts. When she finally pulled up to the house, Karen's breath caught in her throat. The Victorian mansion stood proudly at the end of a quiet street, its grandeur slightly marred by the passage of time. Tall windows lined with ivy, a wraparound porch with a swing, and intricate woodwork hinted at the house's former glory. Karen stepped out of her car and approached the front door, the keys jangling in her hand. As she unlocked the door and stepped inside, the air was thick with the scent of age, musty, but not unpleasant. She flicked on the lights, revealing a foyer filled with antique furniture covered in white sheets. The wood-paneled walls and high ceilings spoke of an era long past. The silence was profound, interrupted only by the creaks of the wooden floorboards beneath her feet. Karen wandered through the rooms, each one revealing more of the house's character. The parlor, with its grand piano and ornate fireplace, the library lined with dusty books, and the dining room with its massive table, all hinted at the lives once lived here. As she made her way upstairs, Karen felt a strange mix of emotions. This house was now hers, a legacy from a family she hardly knew. She paused at the top of the stairs, looking down the long hallway lined with closed doors. What secrets did these rooms hold? What stories were waiting to be uncovered? Karen's exploration would have to wait. She was exhausted from the journey and the emotional whirlwind of the past few days. She chose a small bedroom at the end of the hall, its window offering a view of the overgrown garden below. As she lay on the bed, Karen felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Despite the mystery and the unknown, this house felt like a new beginning. Little did she know, her adventure was only just beginning, and the secrets of the past were about to unravel, changing her life forever. The next morning, Karen awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the dusty curtains. She stretched and took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of excitement and determination. Today, she would begin to explore her new home in earnest. After a quick breakfast, Karen donned a pair of old jeans and a t-shirt, ready to face the dust and cobwebs. She started in the foyer, pulling the sheets off the furniture and uncovering pieces of history with each tug. An ornate mirror here, a vintage settee there. Each item told a story, and Karen found herself wondering about the people who had once lived here. As she moved from room to room, Karen marveled at the craftsmanship and details. The parlor with its grand piano seemed to beckon her, though the keys were now silent and slightly yellowed. In the library, she ran her fingers along the spines of the books, some titles familiar, others long forgotten. The dining room, with its heavy chandelier and dark wood furniture, spoke of grand dinners and lively conversations. Her exploration led her to the kitchen, a large space with a charming, old-fashioned stove and a pantry filled with antique jars and tins. Karen imagined the meals that had been prepared here, the laughter and warmth that must have filled this room. She felt a pang of nostalgia for a time she had never known. As she climbed the stairs to the second floor, the wooden steps creaked under her weight. The hallway stretched out before her, lined with closed doors that seemed to hold their own secrets. Karen decided to start with the room closest to her, pushing open the door to reveal a small study. A large oak desk dominated the space, its surface cluttered with old papers and ink bottles. Karen sifted through the papers, finding old receipts, letters, and even a few sketches. The next room was a bedroom, its four-poster bed covered in a thick layer of dust. The room felt strangely untouched, as if the occupant had just stepped out and might return at any moment. Karen moved to the dresser and opened a drawer, finding neatly folded clothes that had yellowed with age. She closed the drawer gently, feeling a sense of intrusion. As the day wore on, Karen found herself drawn to the attic. She had always been fascinated by attics, with their promise of forgotten treasures and hidden stories. The attic stairs were narrow and steep, and the door creaked loudly as she pushed it open. The attic was dimly lit by a single, dusty window, casting long shadows across the space. Karen's eyes were drawn to a large trunk in the corner. She approached it cautiously, feeling her heart race with anticipation. The trunk was heavy and old, its leather straps cracked with age. She unbuckled the straps and lifted the lid, revealing a trove of old letters, photographs, and diaries. Karen's hands trembled as she picked up the first letter, dated over a century ago. The handwriting was elegant, the paper yellowed and fragile. Karen began to read, her curiosity piqued. The letter spoke of a forbidden romance, of secrets and betrayals. Each word seemed to pull her deeper into a story that was both foreign and familiar. She realized she had stumbled upon a hidden part of her family's history, one that had been carefully concealed for generations. Karen spent hours in the attic, reading letter after letter, each one revealing more about her ancestors and their lives. As the sun began to set, she felt a deep connection to the people who had come before her. Their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and failures, all seemed to resonate within her. With a sense of purpose, Karen carefully gathered the letters and diaries, determined to uncover the full story. She knew that her journey had only just begun, and the secrets of the past were waiting to be revealed. Karen woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The letters and diaries she had discovered the previous day occupied her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant to uncover these hidden stories and bring them to light. After a quick breakfast, she returned to the attic, eager to continue her investigation. She started by organizing the letters chronologically, hoping to piece together a coherent narrative. As she read through them, a clearer picture began to emerge. The letters were primarily written by Eleanor, her distant relative, to a man named James. The tone of the letters was passionate and filled with longing, revealing a deep, forbidden love. Karen's heart ached for Eleanor, who seemed to have lived a life filled with secrets and heartbreak. One diary, in particular, caught her attention. It was small and leather-bound, with Eleanor's initials embossed on the cover. Karen opened it to the first page, her eyes scanning the elegant script. The diary entries provided a more intimate glimpse into Eleanor's life. She wrote about her love for James, the obstacles they faced, and the sacrifices they made to be together. It was clear that their relationship was anything but simple. As Karen delved deeper into the diary, she noticed a pattern. Eleanor often mentioned a hidden place where she and James would meet. The descriptions were vague, but Karen sensed that this place held significant meaning for them. She decided to investigate further, hoping to find clues that might lead her to this secret location. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the front door. Karen made her way downstairs, curious about who could be visiting. She opened the door to find a man standing on the porch, holding a basket of fresh produce. "Hello," he said with a friendly smile. "I'm Tom, your neighbor from down the road. I heard someone had finally moved into the old house and thought I'd come by to introduce myself." Karen smiled back, grateful for the friendly gesture. "Hi, I'm Karen. Thank you for the produce." "That's very kind of you." Tom handed her the basket, his eyes scanning the interior of the house with curiosity. "It's a beautiful place, isn't it? A bit of a fixer-upper, but it has a lot of character." "It definitely does," Karen agreed. "I'm still getting to know it, but I can already tell it's full of history." Tom nodded, his expression turning more serious. "You might want to be careful, though. Some folks around here are a bit protective of the past. They don't take kindly to outsiders digging into old stories." Karen felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Tom shrugged. just a friendly warning. This town has its share of secrets, and some people prefer to keep them buried. But if you need any help, feel free to ask. I've lived here all my life and know a thing or two about the place." Karen thanked him again and watched as he walked back down the driveway. She couldn't shake the feeling that Tom knew more than he was letting on. His warning only fueled her determination to uncover the truth. Returning to the attic, Karen resumed her search for clues. She pored over the letters and diary entries, looking for any hint of the hidden meeting place. Her efforts were rewarded when she found a sketch tucked between the pages of the diary. It was a rough drawing of the house and the surrounding property, with an X marking a spot in the garden. Her heart raced with excitement. Could this be the secret location Eleanor had written about? Karen decided to investigate immediately. She grabbed a flashlight and headed out to the garden, following the directions from the sketch. The garden was overgrown, the plants wild and unruly from years of neglect. She pushed through the foliage, her eyes scanning the ground for any sign of the marked spot. After several minutes of searching, Karen's flashlight beam caught a glimpse of something unusual. She bent down and brushed away the dirt and leaves, revealing a small, weathered stone with an inscription. It was barely legible, but she could make out the initials E and J carved into the surface. Karen's breath caught in her throat. She had found it, the hidden place where Eleanor and James had shared their moments together. As she sat back on her heels, Karen felt a deep sense of connection to her ancestor. She knew that this discovery was just the beginning and that there were many more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Karen's discovery of the hidden stone in the garden sparked a fervor of determination within her. She couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor and James, their secret love, and the hidden aspects of her family's history. After a restless night's sleep, she woke early, eager to continue her exploration. She started her day with a cup of coffee, reviewing the notes she had made from Eleanor's letters and diaries. The next step was clear: she needed to learn more about the hidden place and its significance. Armed with a notepad and a pen, Karen headed back to the garden. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the overgrown garden as Karen knelt beside the weathered stone. She traced the initials with her fingers, imagining the emotions Eleanor and James must have felt as they carved their love into the rock. Determined to find more, Karen began to dig around the stone, hoping to uncover additional clues. After an hour of digging and searching, she unearthed a small, rusted tin box. Her heart pounded with anticipation as she pried it open, revealing a collection of trinkets and photographs. The items were fragile and aged, but each one seemed to tell a story. There was a locket containing a tiny portrait, a handkerchief embroidered with delicate initials, and several photographs of Eleanor and James, their expressions filled with joy and love. Karen carefully laid out the items, taking photographs with her phone to preserve their condition. Each artifact provided a deeper insight into Eleanor's life and her relationship with James. Among the photographs, she found a letter that seemed different from the others. It was sealed with a wax stamp and addressed to Eleanor, but it had never been opened. With trembling hands, Karen broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words were clear. It was a letter from James, written in a tone of urgency and desperation. He spoke of threats, betrayal, and the need to protect Eleanor at all costs. He mentioned a hidden treasure that could secure their future and asked Eleanor to keep it safe until they could be together again. Karen's mind raced with questions. What had happened to James? Why had Eleanor never opened this letter? And most importantly, where was the hidden treasure he spoke of? Determined to find answers, Karen decided to visit the local historical society to gather more information about Eleanor and James. The Historical Society was housed in a quaint brick building near the center of town. Karen was greeted by an elderly woman with a warm smile who introduced herself as Mrs. Thompson, the curator. Karen explained her interest in her family's history and the recent discoveries she had made. Mrs. Thompson's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Eleanor and James, you say? Their story is quite the legend around here. But many details have been lost over the years. What have you found so far? Karen shared the contents of the letter and the photographs she had discovered. Mrs. Thompson listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. Eleanor was indeed a remarkable woman, and her love for James was the talk of the town back then. But their relationship was fraught with challenges. James was involved in some business dealings that put them both at risk. She led Karen to a back room filled with old documents and records. "We might have some records that can help you. Feel free to look through these archives." Karen spent the next few hours poring over old newspapers, letters, and legal documents. She learned that James had been a businessman whose ventures had made him many enemies. His sudden disappearance had been shrouded in mystery, and rumors of a hidden fortune had circulated for years. Among the documents, Karen found a map that caught her eye. It was a detailed drawing of the town and its surroundings, with markings that seemed to correspond to locations mentioned in James's letter. She copied the map and thanked Mrs. Thompson for her help, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Back at the house, Karen spread out the map and compared it to the notes she had taken from Eleanor's diaries. The pieces were beginning to fit together. She knew she was close to uncovering the truth about the hidden treasure and the fate of Eleanor and James. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the garden, Karen felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The secrets she was uncovering were profound, and she sensed that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges. But she was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to honor Eleanor's legacy and find the truth hidden within the past. Karen woke up with a sense of determination, fueled by the discovery she had made the day before. The map and the letter from James hinted at a larger story waiting to be uncovered. But as she prepared to continue her search, she couldn't ignore Tom's warning about the community's resistance to outsiders digging into their past. After breakfast, Karen decided to take a walk through Cedarville. She hoped to learn more about the town and perhaps find more pieces of the puzzle. The streets were quiet, with only a few locals going about their business. She stopped at the local cafe, where the atmosphere was warm and inviting. As she sipped her coffee, she noticed a group of elderly residents chatting at a nearby table. Their conversation drifted over to her, filled with gossip and local lore. Karen decided to approach them, hoping to learn more about Eleanor and James. "Excuse me," she said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Karen. I recently inherited the old Victorian house on Maple Street. I'm trying to learn more about its history and the people who lived there." The group fell silent, their expressions turning wary. An older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes spoke first. "The old Maple House, you say? That's quite a place. Been empty for years." Another man, his face lined with age, nodded. "Eleanor lived there. Nice lady, but her story's a sad one. Folks around here prefer not to talk about it much." Karen sensed the discomfort but pressed on gently. "I've found some letters and diaries that belong to Eleanor. They mention a man named James and some trouble they faced. Do you know anything about that?" The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "James was trouble, all right. Got himself mixed up in some bad business. Eleanor was better off without him, if you ask me. Best to let the past stay buried, young lady." Karen thanked them for their time, realizing she wouldn't get much more information from them. As she left the cafe, she felt a mix of frustration and resolve. The community clearly had strong feelings about Eleanor and James, but she wasn't about to give up. Back at the house, Karen spread out the map and her notes on the dining room table. She carefully traced the locations marked on the map, comparing them to the descriptions in James's letter. One particular spot stood out, a clearing in the woods just outside of town. It seemed to be the meeting place James had mentioned. Determined to follow the lead, Karen packed a small bag with essentials and headed out. The walk to the woods was peaceful, the air filled with the sounds of nature. As she approached the clearing, she noticed how secluded it was. It made sense that Eleanor and James would choose such a place for their secret meetings. The clearing was overgrown, but Karen could see remnants of what might have been a campsite. She began to search the area, her eyes scanning for any signs of the treasure. After several minutes, she found a small, weathered box hidden beneath a pile of stones. Her heart raced as she opened it, revealing a collection of old documents and a locket. The documents were legal papers detailing James's business dealings and the trouble he had been in. There were also letters from James to Eleanor, filled with promises of love and plans for their future together. The locket contained a photograph of Eleanor, her expression soft and wistful. As Karen read through the papers, she realized the extent of the danger James had faced. His business rivals had been ruthless, willing to go to any lengths to silence him. The letters revealed that James had been forced to go into hiding, leaving Eleanor behind to protect her. Karen carefully packed the documents back into the box, her mind swirling with questions. She knew she needed to find out what had happened to James and why he had never returned. The community's resistance to her inquiries made her all the more determined to uncover the truth. As she made her way back to the house, Karen couldn't help but feel a growing connection to Eleanor. She was determined to honor her ancestors' memory by solving the mystery that had haunted her family for generations. The journey was far from over, but Karen knew she was on the right path. Karen spent the evening poring over the documents she had found in the clearing. Each letter and legal paper painted a clearer picture of James's predicament and the love he and Eleanor had shared. The more she read, the more she felt connected to their story. Yet, many questions remained unanswered, and the community's reluctance to share details only fueled her determination. The next morning, Karen decided to visit Tom. She sensed he knew more than he had initially revealed, and his warning about the community had been too specific to ignore. As she walked down the road to his house, she rehearsed what she would say, hoping to convince him to share what he knew. Tom's house was a charming cottage with a well-tended garden. He was outside, tending to his plants, when Karen approached. "Morning, Tom," Karen greeted him with a smile. "Morning, Karen. What brings you here?" Tom wiped his hands on a towel and motioned for her to sit on the porch. "I've been uncovering more about Eleanor and James," Karen began. "I found some documents that shed light on their story, but I feel like there's still so much I don't know. You mentioned the town has secrets, and I think you know more than you're letting on." Tom sighed and looked at Karen thoughtfully. "It's true. There's a lot about this town's history that's been kept quiet. People here have long memories, and not all of them are pleasant." He motioned for her to follow him inside. In his cozy living room, he pulled out an old, leather-bound book from a shelf. "This is the town's unofficial history, written by those who lived through it. My family has been here for generations, and we've kept records." Tom handed her the book, and Karen opened it carefully. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, newspaper clippings, and photographs. As she turned the pages, she found a section dedicated to Eleanor and James. The account confirmed much of what she had already discovered, but also provided new insights. "Eleanor and James were deeply in love," Tom said, looking over her shoulder. "But James's business dealings made him many enemies. When he disappeared, many believed he had been killed. Eleanor, though heartbroken, kept their secret to protect his legacy and herself." Karen's heart sank as she read about the efforts Eleanor had made to keep James's memory alive while protecting herself from those who sought to harm her. "Do you think James really died? Or could he have survived?" Tom shrugged. "It's hard to say. There were rumors that he fled the country, but nothing was ever proven. Eleanor never spoke of him after he disappeared, and she took many secrets to her grave." Karen thanked Tom for his help and returned to the house, her mind racing with possibilities. She spread out the documents and the town's history book on the dining room table, comparing notes and looking for patterns. One detail stood out, a reference to an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of town where James was last seen. Determined to follow this new lead, Karen decided to visit the building. She grabbed her flashlight and set off, her steps brisk with purpose. The building was a dilapidated warehouse, its windows broken and walls covered in ivy. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside, the air was damp and musty. Karen carefully navigated through the debris, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. She searched for any signs that might indicate James had been there. In the far corner, she found a hidden compartment in the floorboards. Her heart raced as she pried it open, revealing a small metal box. Inside the box were more letters and a journal, this one belonging to James. As Karen read through the journal, she learned about his plans to escape and the measures he took to protect Eleanor. He wrote about the treasure and its location, hoping Eleanor would find it and use it to secure her future. Karen felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She had found the answers she was looking for, but the story was far from over. The treasure was still hidden, and the community's secrets were deeper than she had imagined. As she made her way back to the house, Karen knew she was closer to the truth. The pieces were finally starting to fit together, but there were still challenges ahead. She was ready to face them, determined to honor Eleanor and James's legacy and uncover the full truth of their story. The following morning, Karen woke up with a sense of urgency. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, and she was determined to find the hidden treasure mentioned in James's journal. Armed with her notes and a newfound resolve, she decided to explore the old warehouse further, hoping to uncover more clues. As she approached the warehouse, Karen noticed something unusual. A car was parked nearby, and the front door, which she had closed the previous day, was slightly ajar. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and curiosity. She cautiously stepped inside, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice echoing in the empty space. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Karen recognized him instantly. It was a man she had seen around town but had never spoken to. He was tall, with a rugged appearance and a look of determination in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice harsh. "I could ask you the same thing," Karen replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm looking for answers about my family's past." "Who are you?" The man hesitated, then sighed. "Name's Greg. I've been trying to find that treasure for years. My grandfather was one of James's business partners. He believed the treasure was rightfully ours." Karen's mind raced. She had read about James's business dealings and knew they were complex. "The treasure belongs to Eleanor and James. I'm here to uncover the truth and honor their memory." Greg shook his head. "It's not that simple. That treasure is more than just money or valuables. It's a legacy, a way to make things right. My family has suffered because of James's disappearance. We deserve a share of it." The tension in the room was palpable. Karen understood Greg's desperation but knew she couldn't let him take what rightfully belonged to Eleanor and James. "Maybe we can work together," she suggested. "Find the treasure, and then decide what's fair." Greg seemed to consider her offer, but before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Another figure appeared, this time a middle-aged woman with a stern expression. "Greg, what are you doing?" she snapped. "We agreed to keep this quiet." Karen stepped forward. "I'm Karen. I inherited the old house and found letters and diaries. I believe the treasure belongs to my ancestors." The woman's eyes softened slightly. "I'm Claire, Greg's sister. We've been searching for years. Our grandfather was ruined because of James. If there's a treasure, it could change everything for us." Karen realized the depth of the family's desperation. "I understand. Let's find it together and figure out a fair solution." They spent the next few hours searching the warehouse, following the clues from James's journal. As they worked, Karen learned more about Greg and Claire's family and the hardships they had faced. Despite their initial confrontation, a tentative trust began to form. In a hidden corner of the warehouse, they found a trapdoor leading to a small cellar. The air was cool and damp as they descended, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. At the far end of the cellar, they found a large, ornate chest. Greg and Claire looked at Karen, who nodded. Together, they pried open the chest, revealing its contents. Inside were gold coins, jewelry, and documents detailing James's business dealings and plans to make amends. It was a treasure indeed, but one of historical and emotional value as much as monetary. Tears filled Karen's eyes as she thought of Eleanor and James. "We did it," she whispered. "We found it." Greg and Claire seemed equally moved, understanding that the treasure was more than just wealth. It was a piece of history, a connection to their past. As they carefully packed the items, Karen knew the hardest part was yet to come, deciding how to honor the legacy of Eleanor and James while addressing the needs of Greg and Claire's family. But for now, they had found common ground and a shared purpose. As the cellar grew darker with the setting sun, Karen, Greg, and Claire emerged into the warehouse, each carrying a piece of the discovered treasure. The tension of their initial confrontation had eased, replaced by a shared sense of accomplishment and the weight of responsibility. They laid the items out on a makeshift table, carefully examining each piece. Karen picked up one of the documents, a detailed letter from James to Eleanor, outlining his plans to flee the country and the measures he had taken to hide the treasure. The letter also contained a heartfelt plea for Eleanor to find the treasure and use it to secure her future. "It's all here," Karen said softly. James wanted to protect Eleanor, to give her a chance at a better life. Greg and Claire nodded, their expressions a mix of relief and contemplation. "This treasure means a lot to our family," Greg said. "But it's clear it was meant for Eleanor. We need to find a way to honor that." Karen agreed. "Maybe we can use the documents to clear James's name, to set the record straight. The rest of the treasure, we can discuss how to share it fairly." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Karen, Greg, and Claire worked together to catalog the items and prepare to present their findings to the community. Karen reached out to Mrs. Thompson at the Historical Society, who was eager to help. She believed the town would benefit from knowing the true story of Eleanor and James. As they prepared for the presentation, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. One evening, while reviewing the documents, she noticed a reference to a hidden compartment in the old Victorian house. Her heart raced as she realized there might be more secrets waiting to be found. The next morning, Karen invited Greg and Claire to the house. She explained her discovery, and together they began searching the house for the hidden compartment. After several hours of meticulous searching, they found a loose floorboard in the study. Beneath it was a small box, similar to the one Karen had found in the garden. Inside the box were more letters, including a final, tear-stained letter from Eleanor to James. In it, she wrote about her love for him and her sorrow over his disappearance. She also mentioned a secret she had kept hidden, an affair she had with one of James's rivals, which had led to the threats and danger they faced. Karen felt a mix of shock and sympathy. Eleanor's life had been even more complicated than she had imagined. She shared the letter with Greg and Claire, who were equally taken aback. "This changes everything," Claire said quietly. "Eleanor's actions might have put James in danger, but she clearly loved him deeply." Karen nodded. "We need to include this in our presentation. The town deserves to know the full story, even the painful parts." The day of the presentation arrived, and the small hall was filled with townspeople, all curious to hear what Karen and her newfound allies had discovered. Mrs. Thompson introduced them, and Karen took a deep breath before stepping up to the podium. She shared the story of Eleanor and James, revealing the contents of the treasure and the letters they had found. She spoke about the love they shared, the dangers they faced, and the sacrifices they made. When she reached the part about Eleanor's affair, the room fell silent. "This story is not just about love and treasure," Karen said, her voice steady. "It's about the complexity of human relationships, the mistakes we make, and the lengths we go to protect those we love. Eleanor and James's story is a part of this town's history, and it's time we honor it." As Karen finished, the room erupted in applause. The townspeople were moved by the story and grateful for the truth. Many approached Karen, Greg, and Claire to express their appreciation and share their own memories of Eleanor and James. After the presentation, Karen felt a sense of closure. She had uncovered the truth and honored her ancestors' legacy. But she also knew this was not the end. There were still unresolved issues, and she was determined to help Greg and Claire find a fair resolution for their family. As the evening drew to a close, Karen stood outside the hall, looking up at the stars. She felt a deep connection to the past and a renewed sense of purpose for the future. The secrets of the past had been uncovered, but there were always more stories to be told. The days following the presentation were a whirlwind of activity and reflection for Karen. The town's reaction had been overwhelmingly positive, and many locals came forward with their own stories and memories of Eleanor and James. Karen, Greg, and Claire spent hours listening and recording these accounts, adding new layers to the tapestry of their ancestors' lives. Despite the progress, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that there was still one final piece of the puzzle left to find. James's journal had mentioned a critical aspect of his plans that remained unclear. Determined to find closure, she decided to revisit the warehouse one last time. Karen invited Greg and Claire to join her, sharing her suspicions that there might be more clues hidden in the cellar. Armed with flashlights and a renewed sense of purpose, they returned to the dilapidated building. The air inside was cool and musty, a stark contrast to the warm summer day outside. "Let's start in the corner where we found the chest," Karen suggested. "There might be more hidden compartments." They spent the next few hours meticulously searching the cellar, tapping on walls and floorboards, listening for hollow sounds. It was Claire who first noticed something unusual, a loose brick in the far wall. She called Karen and Greg over, and together they carefully removed the brick, revealing a small cavity. Inside the cavity was a metal box, similar to the one they had found before. Karen's hands trembled with anticipation as she opened it. The box contained more documents, but these were different. They were blueprints and plans, detailing a hidden safe within the walls of the old Victorian house. Karen's heart raced as she studied the blueprints. "This must be it," she whispered. "The final piece. James's ultimate plan to protect the treasure." They rushed back to the house, blueprints in hand. Following the detailed instructions, they located the hidden safe behind a false panel in the library wall. Karen's hands shook as she dialed the combination found in James's journal. The lock clicked open, and she swung the heavy door aside. Inside the safe were more documents and a small velvet pouch. Karen carefully opened the pouch, revealing a beautiful necklace with a large, sparkling diamond pendant. Alongside it was a letter, written in James's distinctive handwriting. Karen read the letter aloud. "Dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it means you have found the final piece of our journey. This necklace was meant for you, a symbol of my love and commitment. It is my hope that this treasure will secure your future and protect you from the hardships we faced. I regret that I could not be there with you, but know that my love for you transcends time and distance. Forever yours, James." Tears filled Karen's eyes as she finished reading. The room was silent, each person lost in their thoughts. The necklace was not just a valuable piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of the enduring love between Eleanor and James. Greg and Claire were equally moved. "This necklace could change everything for our family," Greg said softly. "But it's clear it was meant for Eleanor. We need to honor that." Karen nodded, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. "We can use the proceeds from the sale of the necklace to establish a fund in Eleanor's name, to benefit the community and preserve their story." Together, they made plans to have the necklace appraised and to set up the fund. The documents they found would be donated to the Historical Society, ensuring that Eleanor and James's story would be preserved for future generations. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the house, Karen felt a sense of peace. The final piece of the puzzle had been found, and she had fulfilled her promise to uncover the truth and honor her ancestors' legacy. The challenges they had faced brought Karen, Greg, and Claire closer together. They had become a team, united by a common purpose and a shared history. As they stood together in the fading light, they knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, understanding, and a deeper appreciation for the past. The weeks following the discovery of the hidden safe were a blur of activity. Karen, Greg, and Claire worked tirelessly to finalize their plans for the necklace and the newly uncovered documents. The Historical Society was thrilled to receive the documents, and Mrs. Thompson personally ensured that they were preserved and displayed in a special exhibit dedicated to Eleanor and James. The appraisal of the necklace revealed it to be a rare and valuable piece, worth more than any of them had anticipated. With the funds from its sale, they established the Eleanor and James Memorial Fund, dedicated to supporting local historical preservation and community projects in Cedarville. The town's response was overwhelmingly positive. The fund became a symbol of unity and a reminder of the town's rich, albeit complex, history. Karen, Greg, and Claire were invited to numerous town events, where they shared the story of their journey and the love and sacrifices of Eleanor and James. One evening, Karen sat on the porch of the old Victorian house, reflecting on the whirlwind of the past few months. The house, once a mysterious inheritance, had become a place of deep personal significance. She had uncovered the secrets of her ancestors and, in doing so, found a sense of purpose and belonging she had never expected. Tom walked up the path, carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Mind some company?" he asked with a smile. "Not at all," Karen replied, gesturing for him to sit beside her. "It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?" Tom nodded, pouring them each a glass of wine. "You've done an incredible job, Karen. You've brought this town closer together and honored Eleanor and James in the best possible way." Karen took a sip of her wine, feeling a warm sense of accomplishment. "I couldn't have done it without you, Greg, and Claire. This town, this house, it's all become a part of me." Tom smiled, raising his glass. "To new beginnings and honoring the past." They clinked glasses, the sound a gentle reminder of the bonds they had forged and the legacy they had uncovered. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, Karen felt a deep sense of peace. The following day, Karen decided to take a walk through the town. She passed by the cafe, where the elderly residents who had once been wary of her now greeted her warmly. She visited the Historical Society, where Mrs. Thompson proudly showed her the exhibit dedicated to Eleanor and James. The stories and artifacts were beautifully displayed, ensuring that their legacy would be remembered by future generations. Karen's final stop was the clearing in the woods, the place where Eleanor and James had shared their secret moments. She stood there, feeling the connection to the past and the love that had endured despite all obstacles. She placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on the stone marked with their initials, a final tribute to their enduring love. As she made her way back to the house, Karen felt a sense of closure. She had fulfilled her promise to uncover the truth and honor her ancestors. The journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought her new friends, a deeper understanding of her family's history, and a renewed sense of purpose. Back at the house, Karen found Greg and Claire waiting for her on the porch. "We wanted to thank you," Greg said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've done so much for our family and this town." Karen smiled, feeling a sense of warmth and connection. "We did it together. This is as much your story as it is mine." Claire nodded. "Eleanor and James would be proud of what we've accomplished." As the 3 of them stood together, looking out at the town that had become their home, Karen knew that this was not the end. There were always more stories to uncover, more connections to be made, and more legacies to honor. But for now, she was content to enjoy the present, surrounded by friends and the echoes of the past.